What up, you guys? Welcome to another episode of the Straightforward Podcast. Today's guest is actually a friend of mine from college. We've not talked to each other or seen each other in, I guess since we graduated, 2015, 2016, somewhere in there.
Yeah, 10 years, man. The decade will fly by.
It's been a long time. But
hmm
I'm super excited to have her on. We were just chatting about some pretty incredible stories and just evidence of God working in Jenny's life
hmm
in pretty amazing ways. And today I'm gonna let her share a bit of her story, as much or as little as she wants, to hopefully inspire you guys. I'd like to start really with you battling and dealing with for several years type 1 diabetes and what that's been like. Because I know there's a lot of people out there who do have that. Actually, one of my friends has type 1 diabetes. He says he got it from the military and getting a ton of vaccines because he didn't get it till late in life.
Oh,
That's
no way.
that's what he attributes it to, but
Oh,
there's
gosh.
no way to prove it. But
hmm
I think there's some evidence there to stand by that.
hmm
But
hmm
so I'd love for you to share what that's been like and
Yeah,
how you've kind of coped with what you've suppressed over the years of dealing with those
yeah.
struggles, and then as it's come up, how you've coped with it. As much or as little as you'd like, I think people are going to get a lot out of it. So take it away.
Well, first of all, Kyle, thank you so much for allowing me to be on here. You're doing great things, man, and these episodes are super impactful, and it's really cool to see you like stepping into what I actually can see is like totally your calling. So really excited to be here. And yeah, let's just start with the biggest trauma, Kyle. Let's just go into it.
Yes, let's just send it. Why not?
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me back up and just explain. So type 1 diabetes. So diabetes is kind of more of an umbrella term for a disease that encompasses a bunch of different types of diabetes, right? So you can have type 1, type 2, gestational, which is a lot of times when women are pregnant. And there's different like kind of variations, but the biggest thing to note is type 1 and type 2 are very different from each other. Type 2 is the most common. So when people hear, oh, I'm diabetic, about 85% of them are type 2, about 15% are type 1. Now, the difference is, so type 1 diabetes is so diabetes in general is an autoimmune disorder where your body attacks the beta cells in your pancreas that produce insulin. And insulin is a hormone that basically is the key that unlocks the doors of your cells to allow glucose to go in and metabolize and give your body energy. And keep your body in homeostasis,
This
right?
you spitting some science on here. Let's
I
go.
know, I know. Yeah, well, when you have diabetes, you really know the body
Yeah.
because your endocrine system impacts every other system in the body because blood is everywhere, right? And so you have to have healthy blood in order to have a healthy life. And I mean, that can also be like, that'll preach, right? I mean, my gosh, like, so anyway, type 1 diabetes is where you don't produce insulin at all, meaning you are totally insulin dependent,
Yeah.
which means you have to take insulin from outside your body because your body doesn't produce it. So it's either like injections, an insulin pump. Those are pretty much your only two options. Type 2 diabetes is where your body doesn't produce enough insulin or absorb your sugar at the rate to keep you within blood sugar homeostasis.
Right.
Okay. So a lot of times when people like say, oh, I'll be better if I just diet and exercise, that's type 2. Sometimes they take like pills and whatever to kind of regulate it.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are actually on insulin, but as a type 1 diabetic, you're totally insulin dependent. It is technically categorized as a disability. And it's one of those things that's like a 24/7 disease. Like you're constantly monitoring your blood sugar, everything you eat, how much sleep, how hydrated are you, how stressed are you, do you have a sunburn? Different types of like medications can like change your blood sugar. So
Wow.
basically you're one big walking science experiment. Always trying to figure out like, how much do I need to eat, not only to like nourish my body for like a workout or for the day, but what's the protein, carb, fat, sugar ratio for me to know how much insulin to take, when, and all that stuff. So it's just like there's a lot to it. I don't want
Yeah,
to
that's
bore you
a lot.
guys with the details.
That's a lot to be
But
thinking about all the time.
yeah, They say the average type 1 makes on average 150 additional decisions a day.
Whoa.
Yeah. So once I found it out, I was like, oh, okay. No wonder I'm like a little rattled by the end of the day.
Yeah, and you're probably a lot more tired than the average person. Just the
Yeah.
mental exhaustion.
Yeah. I mean, the good thing is, technology is really advanced. So I was diagnosed, when I was 8 years old back in 2000. So this coming October will be my 25th anniversary, which is wild to think about.
Woo!
I know, 25 years, quarter of a century. Yeah, so it's just like one of those things that like, it's, how do I say this? Living with type 1 diabetes is a consistent, management of knowing your limits and like either respecting them or testing them. And so you're like, I don't want to be limited,
Yeah,
right? I want to live my life on my own terms. I don't want to be limited. But at the same time, you can be limited if your blood sugar's out of whack, or like you don't have enough insulin, or you're stranded somewhere and you don't have access to glucose. Like you are in situations where you actually can die.
yeah,
So
yeah.
like it is a very, serious gauging of limit of understanding how to honor your limits and when to push and when to respect. Um, I think we're always kind of figuring that out with our lives.
And does that
Um,
and do you mean specifically like in the context of working out? Like you can push your limit a little too far working out and you run out of insulin in the blood and like you don't have enough to get you back to balance and that could be an issue, like that kind of thing.
well, I think too, like if your blood sugar's low, you'll feel symptoms in your body. So a lot of times when your blood sugar's low, you get spacey, you get really weak, you can start sweating a lot, you're disoriented, you get very dizzy. And so, I mean, there were times so I played, Division I soccer. I was a collegiate goalkeeper at Western Carolina, which is how we know each other.
Go Cats.
Um, yeah, I still remember watching you guys run around the track, and I was like, I would never do track. I would never do.
Yeah, it was not fun. It was definitely not fun.
But it's like, okay, I'm in the middle of a fitness test, and my blood sugar is not perfect. I can't just wait and do my fitness test later because there's like a teamwork mentality, and there's like all these other, what I mean? You're like, am I going to be judged or whatever? So you just like kind of push through it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like a level that's like, okay, it's okay to push through it at a certain degree. But at what point do I need to like stop and like sit out, for
Yeah.
example? It's kind of like an example of like respecting the limit. Yeah, just things like that. But actually it's funny because when I was first diagnosed, I didn't have any symptoms. I went to get a physical to, play sports that fall. I'm pretty sure it was baseball because I was like, I love baseball. And so I had to go get a sports physical to play in the fall. This was like October of 2000, September of 2000. And my brother and I, my mom chased out of school. My brother and I were sitting there, and it's taking a long time. Like, what's taking so long? And the doctor comes in and he goes, hey, like Jenny's, blood sugar seems a little elevated. We need to take a urine sample. And so they did, and there was like traces of urine or traces of glucose in my urine. And so like she needs to go to the hospital. She's like pre-diabetic.
Well,
And so like out of nowhere, my mom's like, okay, I guess we'll go. And my dad's home like mowing the lawn, and like we're like, hey, we got to take her to the hospital. She's pre-diabetic. And like we didn't even know what diabetes was. Like there was no Google really at the time. Um, and my dad's like, what? Like she looks fine. I was like, I know, I feel fine. Like, no, she's got to go.
well,
And so I remember my mom was in a prayer group every Tuesday morning. It was called Moms in Touch, and it was just like a group of moms that would get together and like pray for their kids in the community.
oh,
And so the first thing my mom did in her response was called a neighbor, and they prayed over us before we went to the hospital.
hmm.
And we're driving to the hospital, and I just remember asking like an obscene amount of questions. I'm like, I just turned 8. I don't know what's going on. What's happening? You just like, you're looking at I can't imagine being like a parent and just like having your child like, you don't know what's going on. They don't know what's going on. And my mom was like, you know, um, Jenny, there's a lot of things I don't know. But the one thing I do know is that God is in control. And there was just some way in the way that she said it. I don't know if there's like peace about me, but it was like this like peaceful conviction that was the truth.
Mhm.
And so I remember driving to the hospital. It was only like, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes away. And I kid you not, this is my first God incident I ever experienced in my life. I look up and there's a billboard that says God is in control.
Hmm.
And I'm like, Mom, look out the window, look at this, look at this. And she's like, what? And she's like, oh my gosh, that's crazy, whatever.
Oh,
And so it's just kind of been, so I say that to say, like, living life with type 1 diabetes is kind of a constant reminder of, like, you can do everything right and the outcome won't be what you want. And it's just like, we want to be in control so much. Like, we want to sit down and say, no, I ate this, this, and this. I did this, this, and this. I know this is how it's going to impact my blood sugars and my health. Like, I'm in control of this. I'm giving myself the insulin. Like, I know what I'm doing. And you can do all the right things, and the outcome is still not what you wanted it to be.
yeah,
And there's just like this constant, like, relearning of, like, yes, I'm going to be responsible, but at the end of the day, like, I'm actually not in control.
yeah,
Like God, I believe that God is in control, and it's a really hard lesson to keep swallowing sometimes. But
100%.
yeah, so it's just been kind of like a lifetime of, yeah, but I didn't give credit to type 1 diabetes until like last year. So, I kind of kept it like behind the scenes, and I always was like, if people forget that I'm type 1, then I'm doing my job.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I have two two ways I'll go with this. Back to when you were 8 and you got diagnosed with it.
Mhm.
I'm a little bit ignorant with this. Is it genetic, or like how did it come about at 8 and not when you were born, or like what does that look like?
Yeah, great question. So, genetics do play a role in diabetes, they've found. um, like mostly type 2, but type 1, it's like a 50-50 shot.
Okay.
50% have it in their family, 50% don't. The 50% that don't, they say a lot of it comes from some sort of virus that
Wow.
basically trips the autoimmune system. And then the way that your body responds, happens to be destroying your beta cells. So like, I don't know. Yeah, could have been a virus. Like, I was sick like a couple weeks before that, but I mean, kids are sick all the time. Like, how do you know? But yeah, so mine was not genetic, but for some people it can be.
Sorry, as I'm walking into the laundry.
No, you're good.
So now, fast forward to so it could have been genetics or it could have been a virus when you were 8. That's
Hmm.
so could have been either one of those. Now you walk through 20 something years of dealing with type 1 diabetes. You get to the end
Hmm.
of it, and you were saying this before, where you never really took the time to focus on all the hardship, I guess, that came from it.
Hmm.
You sort of just suppressed. You just dealt with it. You were just like, okay, this is what it is. This is what I do. I'm going to deal with it. And you just bull-nosed your way through it. And then you sort of had to unpack. You had to unpack
Oh gosh.
all of that
Yeah.
emotional and physical turmoil. What
Yeah.
what did that look like? And
Yeah.
is it something you're still doing?
Yeah. Well, so, man, this is a weird thing to say, but to answer your question, I'll say this. The best salesperson is the one that you don't know is selling, right? That's the best salesperson. The one that's just like, no, like I'm advising you, blah, blah, blah. And they very well can be. But the best salesperson is the one that you don't know is selling to you. The best lie, Kyle, is the one that you don't even know is a lie, right? It's the lie that you think is true. That's the best lie. And when you talk about like how the enemy works is through lies. It's just enough truth for it to not be true.
Yeah,
That's the lie.
yeah,
And I had convinced myself that this was a part of my life. It's going to stay in this box. But I remember very vividly sitting in the hospital bed when I kept asking the doctors, I was like, hey, like, when am I going to be okay? When is it going to go away? And she's like, it's not. I'm like, what do you mean it's not going to go away? Like, in my mind at 8 years old, I'd seen people like break their arm and they were in a cast and it was like, oh my God, 6 weeks. That's so long.
yeah. You didn't have the
You know,
conceptual. You could really conceptualize it.
Right. And so I was sitting there and I kept asking this question. And I think the nurse was just probably frustrated with me asking so many questions. And she, I was like, when's it going to go away? Like, how long am I going to have it? She goes, it's not going away. You're going to have this for the rest of your life. And I was like, the rest of my life? Like, how do you comprehend that when you're 8 years old? Like, how do you comprehend chronic? How do you comprehend forever? You know? And so the nurse said that, and I just got like this like ghost face, and my dad came over and like instantly gave me this like just like warm hug, you know, and I was just like,
Mm.
oh my gosh, I'm gonna have this forever. And I remember I told my dad, I said, I don't want to die of beaties. Like, that's what I thought I was doing. I had no idea, right? Like, it is just so funny to kind of look at like a kid's mental like way of thinking about things. And he's like, you're going to be fine. You know, he's like, this is just another obstacle. We're going to figure out how to overcome this. Like, take it one day at a time. He's talking me off the ledge. And there was a switch that flipped in that moment. And it was just like, if I had the language at an 8-year-old, I would have said this. And I'm gonna curse right now because this is how seriously I meant it. It was like, fuck you, watch me. Like, this isn't gonna keep me from doing the things I want to do in my life. Like, sit back and watch me basically overcome this thing, right?
Yeah.
And that's just how I just suppressed it. It was like, nope, you don't matter, doesn't matter, not a thing. Your minor details, your minor details. And so I didn't seek out community. Like, you know, my parents would try to get me to go to like a diabetic camp. And I was like, I don't need disabled friends. Like, it's such a terrible thing to say. But, you know, it's like, I have
Diabetic
my
camp's
friends. I'm
crazy.
fine. Yeah, I know. So, so yeah, so it's just been like, you know, this kind of like not addressing it, suppressing it. Well, when you have type 1 diabetes, you also have symptoms all the time. Like my blood sugar's high, I feel this way. My blood sugar's low, I feel that way. And you're constantly like masking how you feel. Like if you're at a dinner and your number's tanking and everyone's having a conversation, you like want to be part of the conversation and you're trying to not be like, oh my gosh, like my brain's a scramble.
Yeah.
I can't even articulate my words. You know what I'm saying? Like
You gotta try to
I'm
act.
sweating. Yeah. It's like, don't be weird. Like act normal, be normal, you know?
Yeah, I see.
And so you're constantly suppressing these physical manifestations in your body, right?
Mm.
And it ends up kind of spilling into like emotional suppression. Which again, I didn't know this because I was 8 years old. This is the best way I thought I could cope. And like, I had my sights set on being a Division I athlete. Like I always wanted to be that. And this wasn't going to get in the way. And so it just became my like, quote unquote, like life's, you know, mission to play Division I soccer. And then, you know, a couple years later, it was like play Division I sports. And a couple years later, it was like, I want to be a Division I goalkeeper for soccer. And I'm going to defy the odds. I know I'm only 5'4", but my vertical is 24 inches. You know, like I'm going to do it. I'm going to freaking do it.
Let's go.
And, yeah, so it was just kind of like one year after the next of doing what you think you should be doing, suppressing things and not really giving things credit. Like the lie was, this is going to prevent me from doing my life the way that I want, so I'm going to ignore it. The truth is, this is a part of who I am, and there's a lot of ways that you can better people, better your life by actually accepting it and pressing in.
Mm.
But if you're denying the whole thing, it doesn't matter. And I say that because the irony in all of this is I started going to counseling about a year and a half ago. And, my counselor brought this up and I'm like, no, diabetes is fine. Like, it's not my issue. And again, that was a lie. It was totally the issue. And, so I started like, kind of diving into like, I remember she asked me this, she goes, well, in order for you to better connect with yourself at the end of the day, ask yourself, what do I think? How do I feel? And how does it show up in my body?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's a great question. Except I have no idea what that means. Like, I have never asked myself, how do I feel? And how does that show up in my body? Because for, 31 years, I've been telling myself, don't feel it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't feel it. It doesn't matter how you feel. What matters is getting the job done ahead of you, being present in the moment, and achieving everything you want. Like that in my mind was what mattered.
Yeah, now they're
And
literally flipping everything upside down.
yeah, it took me like months to get to the point where I could just even say like on paper, I feel like blank. And she's like, you gotta take out the like. I was like, no, I can't do that.
Dang, she was ruthless.
Yes. So, so I ended up like taking a bath for the first time in 5 years, like a salt bath. I'm a big fan of these. And it was like then that I just like broke down for the first time.
Mm.
And for 24 years was the first time I ever cried about being type 1. Because I was like, I'm not a crier. That's not my thing. And I realized like, oh my gosh, there's so much healing that needs to be done here. Well, then I guess it was like 5 months later, this girl at my gym comes up to me and she goes, hey, like, is that an insulin pump? And I'm like, yeah. She goes, my niece was just diagnosed with type 1.
Mm,
She's 5 years old. And I said, okay, well, put me in touch with her mom. I'd love to, help. And I say all this to say, like, because I've gone through counseling and I've like addressed these things, I'm now able to help mentor this little girl
mm.
who's now 6 years old, right? And it's like how ironic that I'm dealing with my inner child through a manifestation of a real child, right? Who's
That's
going through the
crazy,
same
actually.
things.
Wow. That's insane.
Yeah, that's how the Lord works, man.
Wow. Has it been pretty like cathartic working with this little girl and helping her and just sort of working through that?
I think there's something, I mean, I lone wolfed it for a while. I think there's something about coming alongside each other and like being a battle buddy
Mm-hmm.
that like, as horrible as it is, like trauma can do. Um, there's so much power in that. And I think that's why the Lord has created us for community. Um, when we isolate ourselves, that's where you hit a graveyard, but when you come together, you become a garden.
Yeah.
And there's just like different types of people and like you bring nutrients to each other for each other and you support each other. And like, it's hard. I'll be honest, because there's moments where she says things and I know where she's going in life. And, that's sad. It's, it's a little sad to see, but at the same time, like, you know, how great is it to have somebody who can kind of like, she comes to the CrossFit gym and there's a picture of her and me like flexing with our like diabetic machines,
Oh,
like, um, so yeah, I think it's kind of cool to be like, man, I want to be that role model for her and like be someone that takes care of myself and acknowledges it and like can talk about it, but doesn't let it be like something that prevents me from living the life that I want. So
yeah.
yeah, it's wild.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you definitely didn't. You reached your goal of being a Division 1 athlete. Like I saw it. I worked with you.
Hmm.
I worked with you. I coached you in the weight room a few times,
Yeah, you did. Let's go. I remember.
which is absolutely hilarious. But yeah, I mean,
I know.
you made it. You were a D1 athlete. You were very very good. You and
Thank you.
Chrissy and like the whole thing. You guys were awesome. So
Hmm.
like you definitely definitely allowed it as much of a, I don't want to call it a weakness, but as much of like a thing it is, you turned it into a superpower. Like
Yeah.
you made it your superpower, which is really cool. And now you're doing it double fold by facing these emotions and working with this little girl and helping her. And
Hmm.
that's super awesome. It's gonna be really impactful for her. It's very
Thanks.
encouraging for me to hear. Um, how do you?
Well, well, real quick before we move on, there's one thing that I will say, and you know, I'm a coach. I love to coach. It's my thing. And all my teammates, all my friends make fun of me, Kyle, because I have these like one-liners, right? They're like, where do these come from? I'm like, I don't know. But I literally was like realizing this through counseling. It like hit me. It's like what you numb to, you succumb to.
Hmm,
You got to feel it to heal it.
I love it.
And I was like,
Yeah.
yeah. And so like my friends, so I'll be going to things like, I went to counseling. I'm like, you got to feel it. And they're like, to heal it. You kind of got to bring some humor into it, man. Otherwise, it's just really dramatic.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I love that actually, and that is so true. You have to feel
Hmm.
it. To heal it. You have to feel it. Or if I said it backwards, I'm sorry, but like yes, 100%. Like you do. You cannot run from those feelings because they don't die. Like they just
Hmm.
you literally you just numb it. Like you said, you numb it.
Yeah.
It stays there, and it festers, and then eventually it comes out. Comes out in your relationships. Comes out in your work.
Hmm.
Comes out in your whatever, your body, physical pains, like all sorts of things.
Yeah.
You really
Yeah.
do, and that's actually where I wanted to go to next for anybody out there
Hmm.
who is type 1 diabetic or just
Hmm.
has stuff that they're suppressing that's completely unrelated. But how are you practically dealing with it on a day-to-day basis? Now you mentioned going to
Oof.
counseling. I'm sure
Yeah.
counseling has been super helpful.
Yes.
Is
Subscribe,
there
guys. Do it. Do it.
Yeah, so I'm actually looking into counseling this year for myself. Just from
Good for
so
you.
that podcast 1 episode, I was like, you know
Hmm.
what? I should probably dive into some of that stuff. So I'm actually going to do that this
Yeah.
year. But so what tools can you give someone out there practically that you do? And if it's super simple as just breath work,
Yeah.
it can be that simple. But I'm just curious.
Yeah. So I think for me, there was this whole part of me was like very dead inside. It was just like mechanical, kind of like dead. And I think there's something about like bringing it back to life, like becoming alive, like back in your body, like paying attention to how you feel. And then, for me, I masked everything forever. And so my therapist calls me a maskaholic because that's just like what I always do is I'll be in a situation and I'm great in stressful situations. Like I am the go-to because I can just mask it right up. This is what we got to do, whatever. And it's like, I would have been perfect in the military. Um, but type one kind of didn't let me go there. I mean, my dad was a fighter pilot. He flew F-16s for the Air Force,
Right.
and yeah, and I totally would have done that. Like I would have 100% fallen in his footsteps, but because I'm diabetic, it kind of like, you know,
Good deal.
prevents you from being able to do so. So sometimes it's a limiting factor in the sense that like I have to respect my limits. That's not something I'm going to be able to do. So I've got to go, find another pathway. But, um, so like from a practical standpoint, it's like, feeling it, but I think it's also letting people in.
Mm.
Like we don't talk about like life with type 1 very often. Like it's like it feels like this burden and I have to manage it, otherwise I'm a burden on other people.
Mm.
And on one hand, like there is a bit, it's like a half truth. Like there is some truth to that. But on the other hand, it's like I'm also not allowing people to be someone that can support me, that
Yeah.
can help me, that can almost be rewarded by being someone that is helpful, right? It's like how many times are you happy when someone asks you to help, or how much better do you feel when you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm honored to be somebody that can come alongside you and like help you through this or whatever. It's like we almost deny people close in our life like that opportunity because they don't know about it. And like, one of my roommates I was living with recently, she's like, Jenny, if you don't tell me what to do or how to manage this, if you're ever in a circumstance where you're not okay, I will be ill equipped to help.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dang, like that like hit, and I'm like, dang, like I'm actually preventing people around me the ability to know like how to help, but also just like to be known. Um, I recently had a conversation with one of my best friends since we were 11 years old, and it's the first time this last, I don't know, fall that I actually told her about like what it's like being type 1 diabetic. And so she's just like free bird. She loves to go surf and like on hikes and she does all these great things. And I'm like, my mind, I have to think like, how many snacks do I have packed? How long are we going to be gone? Like, how much insulin do I have? Like, are we going to be hydrated? Like, and then what's my plan B if I don't have enough snacks because I didn't realize that the amount of workouts we're doing is getting my blood sugar down enough? I need to pack like snacks times 3, right? And then an extra insulin, like a site for my pump in case it rips out because it gets caught on a branch. And then the next thing I know, I'm not connected to my pump anymore. Like, I
Yeah.
have to think through all those things.
Yeah. Dang.
She's
Wow.
just like, let's go on a hike and see how long we want to walk
Yeah.
for, you know? And so there's a level of like, I didn't want to be that friend that diminished her freedom because I had to have the strategy to survive the journey, you know? And so it was a really great conversation. And she goes, I had no idea. Like, you've never shared this with me.
Mm.
I was like, when we go surfing, I have to leave my pancreas on the beach. Like, I can't take my pump with me. And she goes, I never thought of it like that. And I'm like, yeah. So it's, it's acknowledging it yourself. It's letting people in and understanding it. And I also think what that does too is it helps other type ones be known. Like, if you know my story, then you maybe can relate to another type one and like how they feel in different situations because it's probably very similar. And then just educating people on like type 1 is very different than type 2. Like we can eat all the same foods and like that's, it's not like we can't have cake.
Yeah.
We just take more insulin for it. And as a hard rule of thumb, I always say if it's not healthy for a type 1 to eat it, it's probably not healthy for anyone to eat it. Like,
Yeah. Dang. Yeah. So
so yeah.
if you, I feel like this is a very dumb question. I'm hesitant to ask it, but I'm only asking it because my buddy who I mentioned, who also has type 1, I've seen him
Hmm.
sometimes just like smack some Starburst or Skittles if he ever
Yeah.
needs to. Is that still effective at times? Like just get some candy in because I know
Oh
that
my
obviously affects
gosh.
your blood sugar.
Yes.
But like so, like I'm just curious. Is that a strategy you use sometimes if you have to?
That is the strategy, Kyle. Like that,
Okay, good. All
when
right.
your
I thought it
number,
was a dumb question.
so if your number starts tanking, and there's a myriad of ways that it can, you just have to get sugar in your body as fast as you can.
Got it.
Like glucose tablets are literally just tablets of sugar. Um, there's varying degrees in like how much like Gatorade, apple juice, like all those things, like 100%. But like sugary candy, not like chocolatey candy, but like just straight sugar is what your body needs because after you get a certain low, like if you go below like 50, your blood sugar number is like below 50, like you're very much in like the pass out range.
Yeah.
And, you know, pass out and then like coma, like then death because your body doesn't have sugar to have your heart pump, to have your brain think,
And the
right? It has
insulin
no,
and your pancreas won't kick the insulin in to generate the blood sugar, the whole thing.
well, so when your blood sugar's low, you need sugar. When your blood sugar's high, you need insulin.
Got it.
So you would have to eat something to come back up. And then if you go too high, take insulin for it to come back down.
Got it.
Yeah.
So
Not a
you
dumb question.
just smack some sugar
Oh
if
man,
it's
I can't
getting
even
low.
tell you. I one time was so desperate on a trip. This was like last weekend. My blood sugar was like tanking. It was like so low. My pump just said LOW, just said low. It's like in the middle of the night. I'm like, oh great. I need that hike. What's gonna do a thing? I had to eat like banana, like soaked in honey, just to bring my number back up, and it was terrible. But it was like what I needed to do. And you're like sweating. It's not a pretty sight.
That's insane. Wow. It's
Yeah.
just it's crazy. It's like it's mind blowing to someone like myself because like your friend. Like if I wanted to go plan a hiking trip for 3 days in the woods, like I
Mhm.
could do it, and the worst that would
Mhm.
happen to me is I'd be hungry. Like that's it. I wouldn't have to
Or
pack snacks or
dehydrated.
nothing. I could survive for 3 days in the woods, no food, and be fine. It's
Yeah.
just mind blowing to me to think that like you have to plan. It's insane. It sounds very challenging.
Yeah. No, it's a lot, but there's worse. There's worse things to have. So, praise
Well,
God I only have type 1 diabetes.
well, well. I mean, you obviously have a good perspective, and you've worked through this, and you've managed, like I said, to make it into a superpower for yourself. And you've not let it hold you back, and
Mm.
that is such a skill. Like that. That's something I'm working on with myself, with other
Mm.
areas of life. Is just like any difficulty you face, like you can turn it into an opportunity for growth, and it can make
Mm-hmm.
you better and refine you and discipline you and all the things. It can just be really challenging to get through it sometimes, but like
Oh, yeah.
you've done it, and that's so cool.
Well, I think it's one of those things, and like I said, it's funny, like the mantra of like, God is in control. Like that being the first, like God instant for me, and then it kind of being like the truth that I can go back to combat like what that trauma was. Like it's like, no, the truth is God is in control, right? And then it's even more wild if you think about it, like if we believe that our bodies are a temple and that like the Holy Spirit resides in us, then I have like, I mean, in a really weird way, it's like I have like the Holy Spirit and God like in my veins. Like His blood is my blood, right? It's in my blood, and it goes with me everywhere I go. And like God is in control. And so it's kind of like to your point of going back and looking at things, like we have to remind ourselves the truth that like our Heavenly Father is the ultimate reviver.
Hmm.
Like that's what He does. He brings things from death to life. And He walks us through the whole process, right? And He's the one that revives it. We don't revive it. It's
Mm-mm.
like by grace through faith,
Yep,
we are able to run the race, right? And so it's like, man, all I'm responsible for is the faith part.
that's it,
That's it, you
man.
know?
Man, that's cool. You're on your preaching, dropping the hammer on
Whew.
people.
Yeah, something like that.
No, I absolutely love it. I
Yeah.
do have to run. I gotta go pick up my son. I get
Yep.
to
All good.
I get to spend the afternoon with him today, so I'm excited too.
Oh,
But
excited for you.
I would actually love to. I would love to attempt scheduling another one. I know we
Yeah.
scheduled like back and forth
Yeah.
with the holidays,
Crazy
and
week.
it
Yeah.
was a nightmare. But let's schedule another one because there's so much more to your story, and I would really like for
Mm.
people to hear it. So let's definitely
Okay.
do another one. But for today, this was really, really great, and you're sharing. I'm trying not to be super overly corny because I genuinely mean it. It's very
Oh gosh.
it's very inspiring for people. It's very encouraging for myself. I think it'd be encouraging for people too.
Thanks. Yeah, I
So
appreciate that. Well, I mean, Kyle, you're being a conduit here. And so, and like I said, I want people to know this, okay? Because I know the college version of Kyle, right? Everybody now is getting to know this now new, I'm going to say like 4.0, like
thanks.
improved, like all these things, right? And first of all, we're all different people in college, okay? So let's just,
Yeah,
give
doesn't count.
ourselves some grace. Yeah, it doesn't count. But I just want to say this because knowing where kind of we were in college and like, we were buddies, we had groups of friends and stuff like that. It is really cool, Kyle, to see you stepping into the things that have kind of always been there that you'd love to do.
Mm,
It's so cool to see you step out and like put yourself out there, and that's not easy. I mean, you're doing these things right now, right? Like your story of revival is happening right now, and it's so cool to see you stepping out and encouraging other people and bringing people alongside you. Like that's a leader, right? That's what leaders do, right? They say, "Hey, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm going through it with you," right? And so it's been really cool to watch your journey, and I'm really excited to see, just how many people sign up with Kyle this year. Change your life, little plug. Sign up with Kyle. He's great. He knows his stuff, and he'll make you a better person, whether physically or not. So I'm really excited for you.
I appreciate that. Where can people
Yeah.
find you on social media if they want to reach out and ask any questions?
Oh gosh.
What's your handle? I'll link it in
So
the
my
show notes too.
handle, yeah, my handle is Jenny from the Block 24.
Jenny for the blog, let's go.
Yeah.
I love
There's just
that.
like periods between each word, but yeah, Jenny from the Block 24. Yeah, find me. I need to be better about kind of like you're actually encouraging me kind of like share my story more. Um, yeah, it's like a weird place to be like sharing versus just existing,
Mm.
But if I, can be help, or if there's a type one who is looking for resources or just even wants to talk, happy to do that. Absolutely happy to do that.
Heck yeah. Awesome. All right,
Cool.
Jenny. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Seriously, this was awesome.
Hmm.
And I'll send you a text. We'll schedule another one either today or tomorrow. Like we'll just lock one in for February, March, whatever, and
Awesome.
let's definitely do another one.
Let's do it. 2025, you're to thrive.
Let's go. All right, you guys. Thank
Awesome.
y'all for tuning in, watching, listening. We appreciate y'all. And as always, you keep moving forward.
Mm, love it. See you, Kyle.